Hi everybody, my name is Jim. Welcome to Sprague Woodturning. This week we're going to combine two maple burls with some awesome greens from Designer Epoxy to make a really cool 85,000 subscriber giveaway project. So for the 85,000 subscriber giveaway project, I figured that I would make some sort of a lidded box or dish, if you will. This will be our base and this will be the top. Now these are both maple burl. They were cleaned up and I was going to use them for another project, but I think that this will actually work very well for this one. This is going to have some incredible figure in it, rays going through it, chatoyance, if you will. And you know, they're both maple burls, but they're both very different. So that's kind of the cool thing too. So when we slice this off, there'll be some of this burl on the base and, you know, so on, right? So along with that, what we're going to do is use the jungle green and the swamp green from Designer Epoxy. These are new greens, so I really want to give these a try, along with some deep cast, and this should be a really cool giveaway project. All right, so let's figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to cast these, because I'm not 100% sure. All right, so this is what I've come up with. This burl actually fits inside this plastic bowl pretty nice. And then what I'm going to do is take this other plastic bowl. I'm going to actually fill a kitchen bag full of rice. I'll stuff it inside of this, put it upside down like so. Put this other burl on top. That'll give us a little bit of height and it'll make our resin pour areas a lot larger as well. The only real tricky part, and the reason why I like using this, is because I don't have to put any plastic on the inside of this, but I'm going to have to glue some material on here to keep this from encroaching in here, because I'm going to wrap this with a bag and then we'll be able to do the pour on each side of it. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to something like I've done before, but not really. All right, let's get this full of rice and then we'll go from there. If you've been a subscriber for a while and you've watched a number of my videos, you know that I like using this rice method. I find it to be very effective when you're trying to combine two basically roughed out bowls together, or if you're doing some vase work. So usually it's very effective, and I really like using this method. And of course, the main reason why I'm using the rice is because if there happens to be a leak, I'm not so concerned about turning it away because it's rice. Might need to put a little bit of plastic down in there to keep that from encroaching in there, but I think that's a good amount. There, I know that's probably a little hard to see, but that'll keep the plastic bag from encroaching into where the resin's going to be. I am going to put a little bit of rice down in here before the plastic goes in. That way, hopefully that will push up on the piece. All right, so off camera, I've been trying to come up with a way to kind of bridge this in, but you know, you still got to run plastic around it. And then, you know, it kind of dawned on me that what I'll do is I'll just wrap this whole thing in two kitchen bags like this. We'll pour the resin in. We'll have a collar on the top, and it should push out on the plastic material. And then I'll just throw a little bit of tape around it just to try and hold it in place. And I don't think that it will encroach into this area here as long as, it's already got fluid in it. I guess we'll find out.
I do find it surprising that how strong these kitchen bags are. I've used this method a number of times with great success, sometimes not so great success. I mean, we do end up getting a little bit of this white plastic into the casting, but I ended up dealing with it and it was not really that big of a deal. But it is a very effective way to wrap these castings without getting leaks.
I will throw some tape around the base of this because I know that it's going to bulge out. And down there, it doesn't matter.
The reason why I'm putting electrical tape all around the bottom of this, if I don't do this, then the resin will pool in the bag on the outside of that bowl, and that's no good.
So what I'm going to do is actually fill this with the resin, and then I will place it in this bed of rice. And then that way, if there is a leak, it'll get caught in the bucket, and hopefully that'll push up on the very bottom of this and keep that resin from pooling in the bottom like it has in the past. I've really tried to come up with a creative idea to do these, and it's not been easy. It hasn't. Anyway, let's get some resin mixed up.
This week we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. The depth of pour is too great to be using the arc cast here, so that's why I've decided to use deep cast. Along with that, we're going to be using the swamp green, which I think is a really cool looking color. I actually really like this color. And then along with that, we're also going to be using the jungle green. So these are two new greens, like I said before earlier in the video, and it'd be interesting to see what they look like when they're all combined together.
So what I'm going to do here is try to pour on one side, one color, and one color on the other side. That may be very difficult to do. We'll have to see here, but yeah, I don't know. We'll give it a shot anyway.
The whole reason why I want to pour one color on one side and not on the other is, of course, to get some color separation between these two greens.
As I expected, it wasn't going to be enough, and it isn't. Need to mix up some more. I'll bring it back when I'm ready. All right, so this is another 24 ounces. I'm thinking this is going to be enough, but I don't know.
For those of you who are curious, the reason why I'm taping the top part of this bag is just to keep it from ballooning out. As you can see, it's kind of swollen out by the resin, so I don't really want that to happen. I want that resin to be pushed a little more in towards the form. That way we're not wasting it.
Okay, well, that's perfect up there. Let me get my bucket with some rice. Of course, I want that to sit down the very base of this into this bed of rice, and hopefully that'll push up on the bottom. What do you think? Is it going to work or not? Kind of skeptical. I guess we'll find out in 3 days. See you then. Well, good morning. It has actually been 4 days. And the reason why it's been 4 days is because I poured this on Friday, and Saturday morning, I poured it late Friday. Saturday morning, I figured I would open up the pressure pot to look at it, and I noticed that the resin level had dropped way off. So that tells me that maybe the bowl with the rice has absorbed the resin. We've had a leak. It could have just plain dropped off. So I had to do another pour, another 24 ounce pour, and it's now Tuesday, and I got to upload Thursday night. So we've got a lot of work to do here. Let's see what this looks like. So the rice method seems to have worked. I mean, it's pretty tight all along here, so I'm happy with that. You'll notice this, when I opened up the pressure pot, I noticed that for some reason this had gotten tightened and it was pushing in on the resin, where the resin area was going to sit. So I relieved it and threw some Gorilla Tape, as you can see. That's good stuff, let me tell you. Threw some Gorilla Tape on there. Very, very, very carefully cut this with the box cutter knife, and luckily enough, it didn't leak. So, but I was a little worried it was going to, so that's why I put the tape on here. Now there you go. Here's our first issue. I hadn't intended on using any UV resin, but I guess we're going to be needing it again today. I'll keep this for future projects. I really like the fact that there's a good clamping area, so if you come across a plastic container like this and you want to use this method, you should hold on to it. The other thing too, it looks like maybe our burl has slid off a little bit this way. So that's a bit of an issue. I don't think it's a huge issue, but
One of the great things about using designer epoxies, deep casting epoxy, is a very long open time on it. So, I came back the next day, checked on it, noticed that the level had dropped off, and the resin was still very liquidy. So I added more and kind of squeezed the bag to mix it up. That way you can avoid witness lines, or if the lines are there, they're certainly not very noticeable.
and you thought I wouldn't be able to do it. Well, sir. Okay. I think this one on the bottom is pretty flat. So, I'm going to go with this center that we see here. And then I'm just going to flatten this a little bit and get a center on here. And then I think we'll get on the lathe. Little bit of resin pooling on the bottom here, but not too bad.
The reason for flattening the very top of this is so that the drive center sits flat on the wood and it can get a good bite.
Yeah, it's going to look odd, but our center is probably going to be right about here-ish.
One of the great things about having a spring-loaded pin in your drive center is you can put things on there loosely and roll them around until you get it perfectly centered.
I think that's not too bad.
Since this is another giveaway video, I need to go over this again. Every time well, not every time that I do one of these videos, but a lot of times people contact others either through email or sometimes they'll leave a comment here on this video and say, congratulations, you won, send me money for shipping. Ladies and gentlemen, I will never ask you for any money. I give these bowls away and I give them away shipping free. Worldwide. I don't care where it's going in the world, I will cover the shipping. I will never ever ask for any money from you. So if you get contacted by these people, please forward that information to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com and I will forward it to the authorities, and hopefully we can catch these people that want to steal from hardworking folks like you and I. So now that that's out of the way, we can actually talk about this week's project. And so, as you can see, it's mounted between the centers, and I've been using the Hercules to basically get rid of all the excess material on the outside of it. And there's our first real look. I think I really groove in these two colors that are in there. The plastic bag is still embedded in areas, but we'll deal with that here in a minute. And the Hercules does have a fairly fresh cutter on it. I put it on for the last video, the butternut wall hanging. And as you can see, it's producing some really good shavings. So, for the most part, the Hercules is what I stuck with here. I do use the Phoenix on the inside of this piece, but the bulk of the work is done with the Hercules. I'm working on what will be the bottom part of this bowl, and what I'm trying to do is get rid of the resin that's sitting on the very top of the wood, the ghosting effect. I'm not a real big fan of it right there. So, for me, I like to get that ghosting effect off of there and then get it right down to solid wood. And then from there, I'll be able to make a better call as to what this is going to be. And a lot of times when I mount these pieces on the lathe, I don't really know what's going to be up and what's going to be down. And of course, my original plan was to actually for this to be the bottom, and ultimately that's what it ends up being. But until I've got all that excess resin removed and I stand back and have a good look at it, I really sometimes really truly don't know. There's a part of me that thinks that maybe I should have gone the other way with this because the rays that this burl would have produced with all the chatoyance on the top of it would probably have looked very nice as well. So it's sometimes well, it's not sometimes most of the times when I put these pieces on the lathe, I'm just winging it. I really am until I develop a plan in my head that I really like. So there, all that ghosting effect is gone. Time to make a decision.
All right, so I just got done truing up the outside of this, and I looked up and the camera wasn't on. That's not a first. This here, to me, is screaming to be left as a holoform. The only issue is the fact that I've got that plastic bowl on the inside, and it's going to break free from the inside and be moving around. I might cut this back to say here, and then we should be able to extract it easy enough, and then it would be sort of a semi-enclosed form. I could put a different color in here. I got to get this plastic out of here that's embedded fairly deep inside this.
So if you use this method, you'll see how effective this compressed air is. I just kept pushing it into those little cracks, and eventually it removes that plastic out of the way. Sometimes you have to give it a little bit of help, but for the most part, the compressed air takes care of it.
So after some debating with myself, I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this into a semi-enclosed bowl. I'll cut it back about like this, and we'll preserve all this really beautiful resin, and I mean it's going to be a very unique looking piece, I think. And then that way, if the opening is large enough, I should be able to extract the plastic bowl that's in there. Anyway, what would you do? I think that that's the way to go with this. Splitting this down the center, the shape of it is kind of messing with me. My intention was to turn this into like a knob. I think that there's enough thickness here that we could have done that. But this here is really cool looking, and I'm really digging it. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. And you're not here, stop me.
As I always say, max flex. You need to roll with the punches. A lot of times when you're doing this resin casting, the one thing that is different from resin casting compared to, normal wood turning where there's no resin, that, you typically don't come up against problems like this, where you see something that's really cool and you don't want to lose it, so you alter your design. That can happen in wood too. You might find some burl or some crotch grain that's really neat, and you want to try and incorporate some way. But this is something that from a resin casting standpoint is something I've really noticed has been a bit of an issue. But it's kind of a refreshing issue because it makes you think about what you're making and how you're making it. My intention is to put this on a glue block, so I turned a tenon on the other side so I could grab it with the chuck, and then very shortly here you'll see me put the glue block on the bottom of this. There was some resin on the very bottom that I'm pointing to that I wanted to get rid of, and the reason for that is because it was, I don't know for sure if all the anchor seal was removed off the very bottom of this piece, so it's important to remove that, because if you stick your glue block to that, you could be in trouble. Hit it with some 60 grit just to give it a good tooth. Here's the waste block with the hot melt glue. Make sure you don't spare it. And probably the best way that I find to put them on is between centers like that. That way you can squeeze out the majority of the glue, and hopefully that'll take away a lot of the vibration that you may see on the outboard end of the lathe. Now, if you have a thick flexible glue joint in there, then of course this is the likelihood is that this is going to vibrate more than if it's more wood on wood contact. So that's why, ideally I like to stick it between centers, but it's not really necessary. But when it is between centers, you can put a greater clamping force on it, and then you don't tend to have as much glue between the two pieces of wood. For those of you who were wondering why I didn't use the inboard hollowing setup, I probably could have. There's no doubt about it. I figured that with the rice that's in the center of this, there really isn't a whole lot of turning to do. I realize that I'm going to lose the plastic bowl that's inside. I'm gonna have to turn that away. But I'm thinking, okay, I'll be able to dump this rice out and then, do some trimming on the inside and call it done. I didn't think that it was going to be that big of an issue at all. And, in the end, it really doesn't really be that big of an issue, to be quite honest with you. And of course, my original plan, I was going to split basically this thing in half, and then I'd be able to rescue my bowl and the rice pack that's in the center of this. And it just goes to show you that you just you just truly sometimes when you step to the lathe don't know what you're going to do. Uh, it just was speaking to me and saying, no, don't split me in half. And the other thing too is, so if you had to split that in half, and it doesn't matter how thin of a kerf parting tool you're going to use, when it goes back together, there's no way, the resin has a grain. So you'd never be able to line that up, and it also would look kind of odd. So that was another reason why I said maybe this isn't such a great idea. But here I'm just cutting in. I'm going to assume that rice is still in there, and I'll be able to get that out, and then it won't be a whole ton of hollowing to get this piece done. But there's the first indication that we've had a leak. The rice by this stage should have been pouring out, and it wasn't. So, yeah.
Well, we definitely had a leak. I'm going to see if I can save some of my rice. I can't let that go to waste. This is why you use rice and not marbles or something like that, because if you do get a resin leak, then it's going to be a bit of a nightmare for you. That explains a lot. This is where our resin went to. I'd say everything else looks like it's solid.
Along with the marbles, I will put casting sand or sand in that category as well. And the only reason why I say that, because if that resin had combined with casting sand, essentially you would have created a rock. And that would have been really tough on your tools to try and get that out of there. Virtually, maybe almost impossible. So, I think that the rice is the way to go. And again, like it turned really, really easy. That was the other thing. So it almost like it wasn't really even there. So, you know, I think it's the safest thing to use. And if you do get a leak like I did here, it turned really, really nicely. Now I knew that these two kitchen bags were going to compress when it went into the pressure pot, and but I didn't really think it was going to be an issue. I figured that there was going to be enough basically flexibility there that it wasn't going to be an issue. But you know, it was. Thankfully, it wasn't that really, that big of an issue. And some people are probably wondering why I'm turning on the outboard end of the lathe, especially a lot of the new subscribers that we have. And that's because I'm left-handed. So I prefer to turn on the outboard end of my general. This is a 20-inch general with left-hand threads. And if you're left-handed and you're looking to buy a lathe, look for one of these, or find a lathe and remove the arbor out of the headstock and then take it to a machinist and have them say, do left-hand threads on the outboard end, and then you're basically, you're going to be out a few dollars to get that done. There's no doubt about it. You might be able to have the machine an adapter that will screw on the outboard end, and then, but right-hand threads on the inside, left-hand threads on the outside, and then pin that on there so it won't come off. I'm sure there's a ton of machinists that are probably cringing at that as I'm saying this, but by all means, share your thoughts on that. Me, I think that I'd probably take the arbor out and have them mill a new arbor with left-hand threads on the outboard end. A good machinist should be able to tackle that, no problem. But by all means, share your thoughts. So as you can see, the majority of the material is now gone. I'm just in the process of thinning this piece out some more. Still got some more of that plastic bowl in there and some rice as well, but it's getting there. You'll see me on this do a lot of mechanical measuring because, I'm not using a laser this week. It was kind of refreshing to basically do hollow turning, and this isn't technically hollow turning because, the opening on it, it's kind of a semi-enclosed hollow form, I guess you would say maybe. But it was nice to get back to hand tools and do everything by hand as opposed to what it usually is. Another modification that I plan on doing is my tool rest. Now, I have two tool rests that I use for turning. They're both made by Robust, and that is exactly what they are. They are very robust. The problem is, and you'll see it in the next clip, I have to, in order to get that tool rest inside of the form, I have to elevate it, and then at this point, it's almost too tall. The only reason why it's not really that big of an issue is because I'm essentially using a scraper. So essentially what I want to do is take that bottom part of the tool rest and cut it back on an angle. I'll leave about an inch at the very end, and then that way I should be able to swing that tool rest deeply down inside of a form like this, and I'll have better tool support while doing so. I should also mention that I'm using the Phoenix to do the very top of this bowl. The reason why I switched to that is just purely tool geometry. The Hercules is a more robust tool in this, and I was having a hard time even swinging the handle back for the cutter to run on the surface. So since this tool has more of a point on it, I was able to run that scraper essentially on the surface, and it actually worked really, really good. I'm actually very impressed with this tool when it's used in this regard and working in little tight areas. It's funny, when I first got this tool from Mike Hunter, I looked at it and I said, I don't know how often I'm going to be using this, but I'm finding I'm using it more and more, and for good reason. It's actually a great tool. So if you're looking to add to your tool collection, give the Phoenix a try because I think that it's a really good tool. especially like the pointy end on it. Get it in really tight areas. So what I did was I used the Hercules here in the very base of this bowl, and then once I swung to the right with it, I then switched to the Phoenix, and that's essentially how I was able to complete the upper part of this. Yes, you could have used a gouge on its side, but it's very, you're exposing a lot of tool edge, and which could be really, really bad.
I know I haven't shown you anything inside yet, so that's what it looks like inside. I know that it looks like it isn't cut clean, but it actually is. The only place that I really need to work on is right in this area, right here, the belly of the bowl, but you know, overall it's cut fairly clean. Right there, what I'm probably gonna do is just dump some thin CA glue in there, and hopefully it'll seal those, some bag material stuck down in there. Those aren't actually thermal cracks or anything like that. And you know, I don't know, I can probably turn away this on the outside too, so I might do that. Can definitely probably delete that. What I'll do is throw some glue in there first. This one, I don't know, a little iffy, but probably. And there's just a couple little spots that I want to put some CA glue on to harden things up, like one right here. And then we'll take a final pass, and then we'll be on to sanding.
This is the thin CA glue from Starbond, and I would only recommend using the thin in this instance. And if you look at when I spray the surface of the wood, I have the accelerator probably a good foot away from the bowl. That way you'll have less foaming when it cures.
There, I'll give that about 15 minutes, let it harden up, and then we will hopefully take our last few passes on this. I think it's actually going to be pretty nice when it's all polished up. Very nice. And I can see the two different colors in here too. I know that a lot of people were skeptical when I was adding them together that they're all going to blend together, but I can definitely see color separation in here. See you in a bit.
So you could probably notice there how, I'm feeling for that edge and feeling for that sweet spot where that cutter wants to be. So when you're using any of these scraping tools, as a general rule, like to start them on their side and then slowly rotate them up until you feel the edge start to cut. And then once you've got that sweet spot, you're good to carry on. If you present the tool with it being straight up and down, you're going to get probably a really devastating catch on the inside of this. So rotate the tool on its side or put it on the side, slowly rotate it up, and then you should be good to go. So just like all scraping tools, and as you can see, this is the Hercules and I've got it on its side, so it's less aggressive when it's on its side. And so it either hunter tools or whoever, if you're using a scraper and it's on its side, you're less likely to damage what you're working on. So here I'm trying to whittle this down and delete all of these little voids that we've got on the very top of it. And eventually I get it. And I think that I do glue probably 2 or 3 times. Part of the reason for that is because I want to make sure that you know, in this case, it isn't a crack, but if it was a crack and you don't throw the glue in it, there's a chance that it might migrate. So it's always best to put some CA glue in there prior to attempting to basically delete a crack or avoid such as this. In the end, happy days, I finally was able to delete both of those on the very top. There was one that was left behind that eventually I pretty much just ended up sanding out, so that was great. I started with the Phoenix on the outside and then soon realized that, the Hercules is a better tool for working on the outboard side of this. If there was a bead on this piece like there was on the butternut hollow form or wall hanging last week, then of course the Phoenix would be the tool for that. But on the outboard end, I prefer to use the Hercules, especially shear cuts.
There's our little problem area down in there. I was pretty much forced to use the thin CA glue because there was no way to fill that. It's just a really fine little split in there where that plastic bag was sitting. So, I mean, it's the size of 2 plastic bags squeezed together. So, anyway, that's what it looks like before sanding. Just got to do a final little trimming outside here. And then had to fill this, and then we'll be on our way. Can't wait to polish this resin out. It's going to be nice.
These are the 3.5-inch dimple discs from sandpaper.ca, and this piece, like all of my resin pieces, was sanded from 60 to 800. And I'll remind you that there are discount codes in the description down below, so if you need some stuff, head on down there and check them out. Now I know that some people do struggle with sanding, and if you look at the drill orientation, sometimes the drill is in reverse, sometimes it's forward, just depends on where I'm working on the piece. So, change your drill directions, change your lathe directions, and you'll probably end up getting a better, well, there's no probably, you will end up getting a better surface from that. Fortunately, this piece wasn't super deep, so I was able to just use the normal sanding pad that I usually do in order to accomplish the sanding on the inside. So before we put any finish on, we want to remove any fine little remaining scratches. So that's what the Triple E buffing compound does if you haven't been here before. And then clean it up with some denatured alcohol.
Here comes the best part. This is Waterlux Original VOC Medium Sheen.
Now I didn't do any buffing on the inside of this piece. After sanding, I looked at the surface and it looked really good to me. So I left it as it was. I could have used other smaller little buffing pads and did some buffing in there, but it would never be the same as it is on the outside. I could have used maybe some 6.0 steel wool on the inside as well, but just didn't see the need for it.
Well, there you have it. Did I make the right decision? I think so. Bottom burl. Some may be questioning why that shouldn't have been maybe on the top. And yeah, you're right. You might be right. Beautiful chatoyance. Here's a really cool area. And the inside. She's a beauty. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for the second coat.
This time I want to use the 6.0 steel wool on the inside. That will prepare the surface for the next coat of finish. And on the outside, I used the Triple E buffing compound like I usually do. And then lastly, clean up with the denatured alcohol to remove any traces of buffing compound.
Good morning. This is the second coat of Waterlux Original VOC Medium Sheen. Hopefully it's the last. It's early in the day. If I need to put a third one on, I will do that at the end of the day here because we're running out of time. But it looked pretty good, so hoping two will do it. So, you know, there's not a huge difference. It's pretty neat, that line that's in the very base of this. Look at the rays in there. And that resin, well, I'm digging that new color, that's for sure. Beautiful stuff. We will see you tomorrow when we're doing the foot.
After 2 coats are finished, it's time to part the piece from the lathe. Here I'm using the 3/16" parting tool from Crown. And then I just free it with the handsaw. I was actually cutting into the glue joint, so it was kind of clogging up the teeth. So eventually I just kind of ease it off, and there you go. Now I've got it mounted on the vacuum chuck. And if you haven't got a vacuum chuck, I'm telling you, you need one. I use this. It's amazing. And wait till you see next week. You're going to be amazed at what I put on this vacuum chuck. So just use the gouge. There wasn't a whole lot of resin on the very bottom. And I sand it from 60 to 500 just to give the wood a little bit of a tooth so I can write on the very bottom. All right, that's it for the video. Let's pick a name to win this beautiful bowl.
Since the last giveaway video, there's been 6 videos, including the 80,000 subscriber giveaway bowl. These are the names that the YouTube random comment picker has selected for each one of those videos. Let's throw these into our bowl that we've made and draw a name. Good luck, everyone. Here are the 6 names. Throw that into our bowl. I can put my hand over it and shake it up too. The winner of the 85,000 subscriber giveaway bowl is OPH. You are the winner of the 85,000 subscriber giveaway bowl. Congratulations. Send me an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com. I will get your details and get your bowl mailed out to you. Congratulations. Speaking of the bowl, let's talk about it. All right, so let's talk about this beauty little bowl. I'll show you inside here first. I will put some rotating photo or video up at the end like I usually do. The sanding's really nice inside. 2 coats of the Waterlux. I think that I'm actually going to put a third on it. That's the beauty about having one of these vacuum chucks. You can do that. Really, really nice resin. Really like the new greens. And you know, I never even really noticed it until the first coat of finish went on, and I forgot to mention it. But you know, there looks like there's a little bit of a witness line right here. Now, the only reason why you know it's there is because I told you. There's no way that it's not really visible, and you wouldn't pick this up and go, oh, what's going on there? So, you know, it's mixing that, kind of squeezing that resin together on the second pour really kind of mixed it up a bit. And to me, you don't even really notice it at all. I thought I would mention it though. There is the very bottom. As you can see, there's no finish on it. And that's because I'm running out of time like I usually am. So that'll probably need 2 coats. And like I said, I don't know. I might put a third coat on everything just to make it perfect. The at the very top, it is a little thinner up here than it is through the rest of the piece, and that was just in an effort to delete that little ugliness that we had on the very top of that. But you know, overall, I'm really happy with this bowl, and I hope that she is as well. Now, a lot of people want to know what things are worth, so with these giveaways, I'll try and start to put a value on these so you have an idea of what I would want for my work. So this here is in the $500 to $600 Canadian price range, if you're curious. I know that pretty much on every video that I post, people say, well, how much is it? How much is it? I'm gonna set this down. And you know, I don't want to disclose the price here in case it's a gift for somebody. So that's why I don't typically do that. But on these giveaways, that'll give you an idea of what something like that costs if you buy it from me. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below, all by itself, to be entered into the 3-gallon kit at $90,000. And well, we only got probably about 3,500 to go, I think, something like that. So please leave that comment down below. And of course, if you want to be entered into these bowl giveaways, please leave a comment down below and your name will go into the bowl draw for that. I guess that's it. Yeah, I guess that's it. Next week will be the butternut wall hanging part 2, and you know, it's looking pretty cool. I'm really impressed with the piece, so hopefully you come on back for that. All right, well, that's it. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing that. I would really appreciate it. A thumbs up helps too. See you next week.